In this video, I'm going to be going through the most common reasons that people object to the ketogenic diet on safety grounds and find out if there is actually any evidence to support these concerns. Let's get started. Hi Carb Dodgers, my name is Dr. Dan Maggs. I'm so glad you've landed on my channel, which is all about achieving lasting weight loss through low carb, real food nutrition. If that is of interest to you, then make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any new videos. The ketogenic diet is considered a fad by some and downright dangerous by others. But is it really? I've been following a ketogenic diet for much of the last 6 years and I found it to be nothing but positive for my weight loss and overall health and well-being. But that's just that. Personal experience, my opinion, it's not evidence. Plenty of people have opinions on the safety of the ketogenic diet, but in this video we're going to be actually looking for scientific evidence where it is available. And it's really important that we get to the bottom of this, because if we've got ongoing worries, then it's going to make life difficult. Back in my late 20s, I'd learnt the power of low carb, so why did I stop? Well, I was eating lunch at work one day when one of my senior colleagues told me that if I continue eating like that, my cholesterol levels would go through the roof. I was feeling great and losing weight, but that comment from my colleague planted a concern in my brain about my future heart health, and it was enough for me to stop. I went back to my normal ways and I carried on gaining weight during my stressful junior doctor years, and I was officially obese just a couple of years later. And it wasn't until 2016 when a chance conversation while I was away skiing led me to the ketogenic diet. In just over 6 months after coming back from that trip, I'd gone from officially obese to a normal weight for the first time in my adult life. But the worries over my long-term health remained. How could eating so much fat be healthy? It went against everything I thought I knew about cholesterol and heart health. Surely there had to be consequences. And if you're watching this video, maybe you've shared the same concerns. But this time was different. During that 6 months, I sort of became an accidental academic. I became fascinated with the subject and read loads of books and medical journals on the subject. I needed to know what I was doing that was working so well for me, making me feel so great, was actually safe for the longer term. Before we get into the common safety concerns, it is important that we are considering the ketogenic diet as a therapeutic diet. And whenever we're considering any sort of treatment, we have to weigh up the risks against the benefits. Now, high quality scientific evidence tells us that the ketogenic diet is a valid option to improve your health. Whether you're looking to lose weight, control health conditions, reverse diseases such as type 2 diabetes, or reduce disease risk markers, the evidence is definitely there. And we must weigh any potential risks against the risks of other treatment options. And a ketogenic diet can be considered a better option for many of us than the alternatives such as taking medications, going on low-calorie diets, or having weight loss surgery. And we must also consider this against the risk of doing nothing, continuing on our current path, not losing excess weight and possibly gaining more as time goes on, not getting our blood glucose under control and potentially developing type 2 diabetes if we haven't already got it. We need to consider the impact of health conditions that are associated with these, things like high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, osteoarthritis caused by excess weight on the joints, sleep apnea, and indeed certain types of cancers are also associated with obesity. The long-term consequences of not taking action can be enormous. So what are the issues that people say are indicators that the ketogenic diet is not safe? Well, there's quite a few, so let's go through them step by step. The first concern is that you may get keto flu. Many people will experience symptoms when they first start out on a ketogenic diet. They can include fatigue, headaches, constipation, and muscle aches. These symptoms are collectively known as keto flu. These effects are temporary, usually lasting only for the first few days as you transition, but the fact that people get these symptoms is often cited as a reason why the ketogenic diet must be bad for us. So what causes keto flu? Keto flu mainly happens because we're no longer producing significant amounts of insulin. Our pancreas doesn't produce as much as we're consuming fewer carbs. Insulin is important for helping us to control our blood glucose levels, but it also has many other effects throughout the body, including on the kidneys. Elevated insulin levels signal to the kidneys to retain fluid, and less insulin means our kidneys hold on to less fluid, so pass more fluid out as urine. When this happens rapidly because of a sudden dietary change, this can throw out our electrolyte balance and make us feel a little bit dehydrated. This fluid loss is the water weight that people often lose in the first few days of a ketogenic diet. The loss of this fluid also means many people appear visibly less bloated after a very short period of time. And despite keto flu often being cited as a reason not to undergo a keto diet, I'm not aware of any evidence that these short-lived symptoms have ever actually caused any significant harm to anyone's health. And what's more, these symptoms can easily usually be significantly reduced or even completely avoided by following these two key simple rules. Number 1, keep hydrated, and number 2, include extra electrolytes in your diet during your transition. And that's a very high level view of keto flu. If you want to learn more about this and the strategies for dealing with this, then I made a guide that you can download for free that talks about this in much more detail. It's called The Common Side Effects of Ketosis and How to Manage Them. And I'll drop the link to that in the description down below this video. The second concern I want to talk about is that people say the ketogenic diet increases risk of nutritional deficiencies or it causes nutrient imbalances. The basic argument behind this is whenever we limit certain food groups or ingredients, then it leads to vitamin or mineral deficiencies. So let's clear up some of the most common misconceptions here. Does a ketogenic diet cause nutrient deficiencies? Well, no. A real food ketogenic diet will often increase micronutrient consumption. Most people eating a standard Western diet will be consuming an excessive amount of high carbohydrate foods, much of which will be ultra processed and nutritionally very poor. Usually the first foods to be eliminated when we switch to a ketogenic diet are things like cakes, biscuits, chips, sweets, basically all the junk foods that are very high in carbs and very low in micronutrients. Switching to a real food-based ketogenic diet will mean you eat more highly nutritious foods like salmon, eggs, nuts and seeds, and of course Mediterranean vegetables. And with a well-rounded meal plan, the right knowledge and planning, a ketogenic diet can be a much better source of vitamins, minerals and all essential nutrients than the average Western diet. But don't we need to consume carbohydrates? One of the things I see popping up quite commonly in the comment section is, hey, but we need to eat carbs. Many people incorrectly label carbohydrates as an essential nutrient. And this is not the case. An essential nutrient is one which must be consumed and can't be made by the body. And yes, we need glucose in our body, but we can make glucose, a process called gluconeogenesis. And therefore we don't need to consume carbohydrates in order to get glucose. Humans can survive and indeed thrive without consuming carbohydrates. And anyway, a ketogenic diet is a low carb diet, not a no carb diet. Is the ketogenic diet too high in protein? There is some concern that a diet high in protein could reduce calcium in the bones, lead to osteoporosis and damage your kidneys, or even elevate blood lipids, increasing heart disease risk. And many commenters still think that a ketogenic diet is overloaded with protein, it's all bacon and eggs, and it's easy to get stuck in a rut with food and end up eating bacon and eggs all day, every day. It's not that I have anything against a high protein diet, but the perception of that ketogenic diets is a protein heavy one is a throwback to the 80s from the Atkins approach to ketosis. Ketogenic diets are generally based on moderate or indeed adequate protein intake, not high protein intake. But like any diet, there are good ways and bad ways to eat. Unlike carbohydrates, protein is an essential macronutrient. And whilst you think we'd have a good idea of how much the right amount of protein is to eat, it's actually the subject of a lot of debate. And while the recommended daily intake may be enough to prevent absolute deficiency, some experts believe it's insufficient to optimize health and body composition. And evidence shows that older individuals may benefit from a higher protein intake, and long-term studies show that higher protein intake may also improve bone health. The bottom line is that a ketogenic diet is not necessarily a high protein diet, and that eating enough protein is important for building and maintaining muscle mass and bone health. The third concern that is commonly cited is that a ketogenic diet may cause low blood sugar or hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia, often called hypos, is the medical term for when your blood glucose levels drop too low and you become symptomatic. The symptoms may include confusion, heart palpitations, shakiness, and anxiety, and actually may cause people to go unconscious in very severe cases. Again, this sort of comes back to the idea that because you're not eating any carbohydrate, your blood glucose levels will drop. And as I mentioned earlier, our blood glucose levels don't just completely drop because we are not eating carbohydrates. Our bodies are not solely reliant on carbs, and it's a good job because carbohydrate-based foods would not have always been readily available to our ancestors. That said, if you've been consuming carbohydrates all day every day for most of your life, then you might find that your body takes a bit of time to adjust. So yes, I have encountered people who have had symptomatic hypoglycemia in the days after transitioning from a ketogenic diet, where the body hasn't really ramped up the production of ketones yet to replace the blood glucose. More commonly though, hypoglycemia is usually caused by medications that doctors have given to lower blood glucose. And this is where we need to be really careful. People who are taking blood glucose lowering medications such as insulin will need to do this with a lot of care. As blood glucose levels improve on the ketogenic diet, taking blood glucose lowering medications could drop the blood glucose levels down too low to the point of hypoglycemia. So anyone taking blood glucose lowering medications, and if you're not sure, ask your doctor, you should speak to your medical practitioner before starting a ketogenic diet, as they may need adjusting, and often quite quickly as well. In the description of this video, I've linked a practical guide to making those medication changes that you can give to your clinician in case they are not familiar with doing this. So does this make the ketogenic diet unsafe? No, this is an expected side effect and simply serves to prove how effective the ketogenic diet is at controlling blood glucose. It's just worth mentioning that the same is also true for those of you who are on blood pressure lowering medications. A ketogenic diet can lead to rapid improvements in blood pressure, so those medications will need to be monitored and may need reducing or even stopping. The fourth concern that we're going to talk about is that following a ketogenic diet may trigger eating disorders. Some experts level safety warnings that a ketogenic diet could lead to eating disorders or social isolation. While there's no scientific evidence that links ketogenic diets with causing eating problems, it is possible, as with any significant lifestyle or food behavior change. If you're someone with a history of disordered eating or food challenges, then any dietary changes may not be suitable for you to do unsupervised. This is one of the reasons you'll often see the standard disclaimer: before embarking on any diet or exercise program, please consult with your doctor. That said, I'm aware of a number of psychiatrists with a special interest in this area who are using the ketogenic diet to help people with eating, but only under careful supervision. There's also some positive news coming out of small observational studies into eating behaviors with the ketogenic diet. Patients were observed to reduce their binge eating and food addiction whilst also losing weight. They also found improved satiety, reduced appetite, and improved hormonal control. Further studies have documented ketogenic diets improving mental health conditions linked to eating disorders such as reduced anxiety and depression, and all the links to the scientific papers we've used to make this video are linked down below in the description, so you can go away and check those out if you want some more details. We're at very early stages with research into this area, and I'm excited to see this develop. Bottom line, there are potential advantages that for many will outweigh any negatives, but a ketogenic diet may not be suitable for those vulnerable to or with a history of disordered eating without specialist supervision. The fifth concern is that the ketogenic diet may be harmful during pregnancy and breastfeeding. There are concerns that the ketogenic diet may potentially be dangerous during pregnancy and breastfeeding due to sudden diet changes or following a very restrictive carb intake. Let's take this step by step, and let's start before the baby is actually conceived and in the early days of pregnancy. Ketogenic diets are increasingly being used for women with polycystic ovarian syndrome as a treatment for infertility. But there have been some concerns raised about removing processed carbohydrates from your diet in relation to neural tube defects such as spina bifida. These defects are strongly associated with a lack of folic acid. Cereals and breads often have vitamins and minerals added to them because they are often so nutritionally poor on their own they wouldn't even be considered food without these additives. This is a process known as fortification and often includes folic acid. It's claimed that removing these foods from your diet could lead to insufficient folic acid and therefore lead to increased risk of neural tube defect. And you can certainly get folic acid by consuming a real food diet, especially by eating plenty of dark leafy green vegetables. However, the standard medical advice for any woman considering pregnancy and in the early weeks of pregnancy is to take a folic acid supplement regardless of her diet. So the data does not suggest an association between low carb diets and neural tube defects independently from folic acid content. Now let's talk about pregnancy itself. Good nutrition is important for everyone, but particularly important for pregnant women for healthy growth and development of their baby. Whilst we can safely say that removing sugar and highly processed food during pregnancy is a good thing, the science regarding what is a safe level of carbohydrate consumption in pregnancy is absent. This isn't surprising, as scientists don't do experiments on pregnant women for obvious ethical reasons. I'm aware of a number of women who've been on long-term ketogenic diets prior to pregnancy who have continued throughout their pregnancies and everything has been absolutely fine. And yeah, you might be thinking, why would anyone even think about starting a ketogenic diet during pregnancy? Well, we know that ketogenic diets are good for diabetes and many women develop gestational diabetes or diabetes within pregnancy. So it's possible that a ketogenic diet may help, but I don't see us ever really being able to say for definite that it's a safe option for managing gestational diabetes. What about breastfeeding? I often get asked whether it's safe to go on a ketogenic diet when breastfeeding. It's common for women to want to lose some weight after having had a baby. Again, it's vital to get enough nutrients while breastfeeding because it uses a lot of energy and a lot of nutrition, and your need for specific nutrients including protein, calcium, iron, and many vitamins goes up as well. And many women choose to take a specific supplement to support their breastfeeding. And according to advice from La Leche League, who are a breastfeeding charity, a low-carb eating style is compatible with breastfeeding as long as you take a sensible approach, including eating regularly and including a wide variety of healthy foods such as vegetables, fruits, and proteins to ensure sufficient nutrition. Eliminating unhealthy carbs with little nutritional benefit can be very helpful for many mothers. Foods like sugary snacks, junk foods, crackers, chips, etc. But importantly, those considering a more strict ketogenic diet should be aware of a very small number of cases that have been reported of non-diabetic breastfeeding women ending up in ketoacidosis. Diabetic ketoacidosis is a serious life-threatening complication of type 1 diabetes and sometimes of type 2 diabetes. And it's important to note here that ketoacidosis should not be confused with ketosis, but often is, even by doctors. A ketogenic diet induces ketosis, but is not an established cause of clinically significant ketoacidosis. It's a big and really important difference. Now, the reason that these cases have occurred are not really clearly understood. It does seem that increased nutritional demand from milk production, combined with extremely low carbohydrate diets, along with illness in some of the cases, may have triggered these metabolic changes. So extremely low carb intake may in rare cases lead to ketoacidosis when breastfeeding, although it's so rare we have very little research to go on. That said, it's probably best to exercise caution when reducing carbohydrates during breastfeeding, and perhaps a more moderate approach with a focus on good nutrition would be more appropriate. Now let's talk about people with gallbladder disease. For those with health challenges that make fat more difficult to break down or digest, such as if you're recently post-bariatric surgery or have some other rarer disorders that interfere with normal fat metabolism, then a ketogenic diet is not advised without medical supervision. The gallbladder produces bile, and one of the key functions of bile is to break down fat. So those who have had their gallbladder removed may have issues with the increased fat consumption in their diet. I do have some clients who have done well on a ketogenic diet with no gallbladder. However, it seemed everyone will be different in the amount of fat that they can tolerate. Others struggle. Now, I don't really see this as a safety concern. It's just that some individuals might not really tolerate this dietary approach following the removal of the gallbladder. Number 7 is weakened bone health. The ketogenic diet is sometimes linked to an increased risk of fractures or reduced bone density. The majority of studies into this area are based on children with severe epilepsy, for which the ketogenic diet is also an effective treatment. In fact, much of the safety data about the ketogenic diet is based on studies done in children with epilepsy. There are some complicating factors that make it difficult to point the finger directly at the ketogenic diet. For example, children with severe epilepsy may have a number of contributors to poor bone health, from anti-epilepsy drugs, reduced mobilization, reduced food quality, and poor vitamin D levels. Some larger scale, more comprehensive studies have found no detrimental impact on bone health, including a large research project conducted over 2 years following diabetic patients on a ketogenic diet. So overall, there is no compelling evidence of increased risk of bone density or breakages without any additional risk factors. Number 8, is the ketogenic diet harmful to your kidneys? There have been some concerns that a ketogenic diet will hasten kidney failure and other medical problems in patients with kidney disease and cause kidney stones in others. Let's start with kidney stones. Most of the research showing that a ketogenic diet could increase the risk of kidney stones again comes from studies with children suffering from epilepsy. Much like what we have talked about with bone health, there are other factors at play, such as dehydration, the type of ketogenic diet, quality of foods, epilepsy drugs, which can also increase the risk of kidney stones. Currently, I've not seen any evidence of an increased risk of kidney stones from a ketogenic diet without any additional contributing risk factors. Let's talk about kidney disease and protein. Much of the criticism citing the risk to kidney health is based around the assumptions of high protein intake, and I've already said ketogenic diets are not necessarily high protein diets. There's actually no evidence that high protein intake harms kidney function in people who don't have kidney disease. Instead, it has plenty of health benefits and may even improve your health. A study in 2021 found that high normal protein intake is not associated with faster renal deterioration in patients with type 2 diabetes. Two of the main risk factors for kidney failure, high blood pressure and diabetes, have been shown to improve with a ketogenic diet. And a study last year led by Dr. David Unwin of 134 patients with normal renal function or mild kidney disease found evidence that a low-carb diet may improve renal and cardiovascular risk factors for people with type 2 diabetes. What about chronic kidney disease? There are some small studies on patients with mild kidney disease that are promising. One study published in 2020 included 38 patients with early stage chronic kidney disease. Interestingly, some of the participants reported full recovery of kidney function. This study suggests that a ketogenic diet may be effective in improving renal function for those who have mild kidney disease. What remains to be shown is the effect of this dietary approach on people with moderate to severe chronic kidney disease, where the research is definitely lacking. For those with early stage kidney disease, a ketogenic diet may have a positive impact on renal health. For those with significant chronic kidney disease, the advice is currently to avoid a ketogenic diet pending further studies, which of course may or may not actually happen. Right, let's finish with the big one. And it was my main concern. It's the main concern of many other people too. Does a ketogenic diet cause cardiovascular disease? That's heart disease, strokes, things like that. And it was definitely a concern for one of my clients, Crystal, who prior to working with me had a scan which identified mild plaque formation and indicated coronary vessel disease. Her main aim, of course, was to lose weight and maintain that weight loss, but she had some big worries around her heart health. In a period of just over 12 months, her BMI improved dramatically, she'd lost 8 inches from her waist and her bone density had improved, and she'd also reversed her pre-diabetes. On top of all her exciting health improvements was that her updated cardiac scans showed no plaque, hardening, or calcification present. Yep, it actually went the other way. All those early signs of heart disease went away. And Crystal wrote to me and said, I'm reversing some of the aging process. I couldn't be more excited. So why do we get so worried about fat consumption? Well, it comes down to this, the diet heart hypothesis. Dr. Ancel Keys proposed the diet heart hypothesis in the 1950s. This hypothesis postulates that reducing dietary saturated fat reduces blood cholesterol and thereby reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease. And Ancel Keys himself led one of the biggest studies into this subject, the Minnesota coronary experiment, which happened in the late 60s and early 70s. They took nearly 1,000 people who were residents in a nursing home and 6 state mental hospitals in Minnesota. Because of the nature of these institutions, the researchers were able to completely control the diets of these people. Now, we don't do studies like this anymore because it's not considered ethical, but this was a very high quality study. The control group ate a diet that was high in saturated fats, the normal diet at the time. Other group had a cholesterol lowering diet that replaced saturated fats with polyunsaturated fats. And yes, the group on the cholesterol lowering diet did indeed have lower cholesterol. So the first bit of the diet heart hypothesis is definitely true, but it's the second bit where it comes unstuck because it made no difference to the levels of heart disease. So why didn't this study, which was done by the guy who suggested the diet heart hypothesis, effectively disprove it? Well, they didn't like the results, so they never published it. In fact, the results were eventually published in 2016 after a group of scientists reviewed the original unpublished data that was found in one of the researchers' basements after his death. Here's what they concluded. Available evidence from randomized control trials shows that replacement of saturated fat in the diet with linoleic acid, the polyunsaturated fat, effectively lowers serum cholesterol, but does not support the hypothesis that this translates to a lower risk of death from coronary heart disease or all causes. Findings from the Minnesota coronary experiment add to growing evidence that incomplete publication has contributed to the overestimation of the benefits of replacing saturated fats with vegetable oils rich in linoleic acid. If you want a comprehensive overview of how the misinformation about saturated fats took hold in the scientific community and then in the public imagination, and how recent findings have overturned these beliefs, I highly recommend recommend the book The Big Fat Surprise: Why Butter, Meat and Cheese Belong in a Healthy Diet by Nina Teicholz. I'll put a link to that book down in the description. So yes, eating saturated fat is okay, but does it mean that the ketogenic diet is okay? Well, the ketogenic diet improves all markers of metabolic syndrome. So during my junior doctor years, I worked in coronary care, essentially a ward of people who've just had heart attacks. And it shocked me to realize just how many of those people had type 2 diabetes. There have been many studies demonstrating the cardiovascular benefits of a ketogenic diet, impressively reducing weight, improving blood pressure, blood glucose, improving insulin resistance, improving HDL, the so-called good cholesterol. Now, these are the 5 markers of metabolic syndrome, a condition which underlies poor metabolic health. Like those patients on coronary care with type 2 diabetes, individuals with metabolic syndrome are at significantly increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, we don't have and never will have long-term studies like the Minnesota coronary experiment to look at this in more detail. So at the end, you ultimately have to make a decision based on the available evidence. But there is one group of people I do need to mention who should probably avoid a ketogenic diet. Approximately 1 in 200 people have a condition called familial hypercholesterolemia, or FH. So it's really quite common. And this is a genetic disease of cholesterol metabolism, which does put people at high risk of heart disease. Often people with this condition will know of individuals in their family who have died relatively young because of heart disease. But people with FH don't respond in the normal way to a ketogenic diet and therefore shouldn't do it. It's one of the reasons I always suggest people do baseline testing prior to starting a ketogenic diet and then within a few months of starting it. And no, this doesn't mean the ketogenic diet is not safe. It just means it's not safe for those people with that particular disease. So I think we've addressed all the major concerns here. A ketogenic diet is absolutely safe for most people with a few notable exceptions. And the ketogenic diet has been shown to be highly effective for weight loss and for improving many other health markers. Ultimately, whether a ketogenic diet is safe for you requires weighing up the potential health benefits with your own unique health circumstances. And that can occasionally be quite tricky. But even if you decide it's not right for you, then making dietary changes such as eliminating highly processed food and sugar-laden food is always a positive thing. And if you do decide to give it a go, remember, there is good and bad ways to eat on a ketogenic diet. Your food choices are important to your long-term health and the safety of any diet. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, then I'd appreciate you giving it a thumbs up. If you thought it was rubbish, well, thank you for watching it all the way to the end anyway. If you think that I have missed anything in this video, then please let me know in the comments down below. Do make sure you're subscribed to my channel for more videos like this, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.